A very good afternoon, and thank you so much for having taken the time to have joined our webinar today. My name is Jay, and I am an identity and access management expert here at ManageEngine. So before we get started with today's presentation, I would like to take the help of you early birds to, quickly check the audio and video, a quick audio video check before we get started. If you can hear me loud and clear, I'm going to say 1, 2, 3. If you can say 1, 2, 3 on chat for confirmation, that would be wonderful. I'm saying 1, 2, 3, check. Please type 1, 2, 3 on chat and I would take that as confirmation. Oh, lovely. Thank you so much for the confirmation, guys. Thank you, Steve, Andrew, and Jake. Thank you. You guys are lovely. So the next quick verification is on the video. If you can see my screen that has the title for today's webinar, please give me a thumbs up or a good to go sign. Awesome. Thank you again for the confirmation. Yes, we are all set and good to go. So it's always a wonderful sight to have you guys over for our ManageEngine webinars. This is a part of the global webinar series that we are conducting here at ManageEngine. So today's topic is going to be around IT security and identity access management. So one important aspect of identity and access management that many a times left unanswered is the IT security aspect of it. So we treat IAM and IT security as two separate entities of IT. Is that how it's supposed to be handled? That is the million-dollar question. So when we're talking about the Office 365 as an identity and access management solution, we will have to acknowledge and understand the fact that the migration towards Office 365 has been phenomenal. Microsoft, in fact, claims that the Microsoft 365 or Office 365 migration has doubled in the last 1 year. So, as organizations or as the number of organizations that are migrating their email services to Office 365 and other cloud services increases, it becomes almost impossible to do all of this all by yourself, given the quantum of data that gets migrated during this process from your existing on-prem infrastructure to that on the cloud. It is very obvious that organizations take the help of a third-party vendor. When that happens, many a times these third-party vendors are very much equipped to do the migration but aren't security experts or aren't really equipped to also handle the challenges that come along with this migration. What am I talking about right here? So when this specific migration happens, a quick audio check. I've got a message from Syed saying that my voice is not clear. A quick audio check. Thank you, Jake and Prashant, for confirming. Perfect. So yeah, we were talking about Office 365 migration. So when we're talking about the security posture, it becomes all the more difficult for an administrator to keep a complete tab on what is going to happen or what are the new variables that are in the picture right now. So we would need to understand that when this migration happens, the number of parameters or the risk score for your organization is eventually going to take a dip. So you would need to embrace yourself or brace yourself with a tool or a solution that could essentially get you do this migration without a big challenge. So what the US government did was they put together a best practice or a recommendation or a guidelines essentially to cater to this specific problem. So they saw huge transition happening towards the cloud, huge transition happening towards Office 365. So that being the case, almost around October of last year, the Cybersecurity and the Infrastructure Security Agency, which is the CISA in short, they conducted several engagements with Office 365 customers around the world. They understood what was going wrong. So much to the organization's shock, most important factors of security were very much ignored there was tremendous oversight that was happening. So this led to a huge series of mailbox compromises and account takeovers in the last 1 year. We've got statistics that I'd be walking you through today's session. You would understand the intensity of what I'm talking about in a while. So what do we have right here? It seems like a perfectly happy organization. All the employees look absolutely happy. I'm pretty sure the administrator has done a great job in keeping them, to date, giving them all the resources that they need. They seem to be an absolutely fine organization posing happily for the picture. This is what you and I see. But when it comes to an attacker, that is least of his concern or least of her concern. So what is the differentiator right here? An attacker very much identifies a user based on their behavior. They try to check how the user behaves on a day-to-day basis. They try and draw profiles for each of these users. So for an attacker, all that matters is that one vulnerable user to get inside. All that matters is that. So in fact, the attackers go to the extent of stalking the users for months together. They understand their behavior. They go to the extent of figuring out when does that user have their coffee, when does that user take a break, all just so that they can find that right spot to get into your organization or breach your security. So one thing that we need to understand is the security of your organization is only as strong as the weakest link. And in this case, the weakest link is going to be your users, because I'm pretty sure all of you who joined me today are going to have a huge smile on your face when I say we still have users in our organizations who write their passwords on a piece of paper and have it stuck right on top of their desktop. Isn't that true? I'm pretty sure you're nodding your head. What are we going to do when we have such users? Though you try to improve your security posture, there are always going to be a user who got sloppy at some point in time. And given the fact that Office 365, unlike your on-prem infrastructures, isn't absolutely under your control. Why am I saying that? Because when it comes to your on-prem structure, there are instances where you would have a complete see-through into every aspect of your system. When it comes to a cloud infrastructure, it is bound to have touch points that are beyond your control, and also that now your users are not anymore working out of your office, or probably working out of a coffee shop, probably in a different geographical location, in a different time zone. That makes it all the more difficult for you to ensure that you have a security policy that caters to all these variables at the same time. So what we need to understand is the attack that happens many a time goes absolutely unnoticed, because the attacker takes considerable amount of time in preparing, in researching, in finding out that one vulnerable user, and right after they get hold of that user, the user need not even be an administrator, does not even require enough credentials. All that the attacker needs is one account, and later, after getting inside, can request for privileges and somehow get hold of administrative privileges, or somehow laterally move, as they call it. It's a huge trend right now, island hopping. That's what they do. They don't stick to one account, they keep migrating between accounts, or they keep laterally moving between accounts, so that they spread their line of control. They do not just take hold of administrative accounts, even the normal users, some executive. Wow, if that is the case, you know what's going to follow next. An email from the executive's account to the administrator asking for a privilege. What is the administrator going to do? So we are talking about compromised organizations that have lost millions of dollars because they were necessarily not able to contain the attack, or not necessarily be able to discover that the attack had happened before it had caused tremendous damage. So 68% of these breaches take more than a month to discover. What are you going to do right there? And in fact, the worst part is the management and the organizations together agree that they are undergoing attacks as old as phishing attacks. And the worst part is, one of every three organization out there in the last 1 year using Office 365 had either at least one phishing attack or one event of that sort, either noticed or unnoticed. These are statistics that we were able to draw based on the survey that we conducted. So what does an attacker essentially try to do? They try to get access to your system by taking over an account. So all that they need is one account so they can impersonate a user. When it comes to ATO, as they call it, or the account takeover, as they call it, the attacker looks for the weakest spot or the weakest user or the most vulnerable user whose actions can very much go under the radar. They try to become you or that specific account that got hacked. They could initiate lots of attacks afterwards. They could try and bring in malware into your system. So all of this essentially happens because your users are not educated well enough. So when we're talking about a phishing attack, an age-old way of an email phishing attack, nothing more complicated. It is quite simple. The email says it's from the Nigerian king. The email says they're going to offer you $1 million, and all you had to do was just click on one link and probably fill up a detail. Your users are going to be tempted to do that and eventually end up not just compromising their security but compromising the security of your entire organization. So what do you do at this point in time? You would need to essentially try and have a holistic picture of your security landscape. And how does that happen? So to start off, you will need to understand the types of attacks that your organization can necessarily undergo. That starts with something as archaic or age old as a phishing attack. But then, trust me, the numbers right here are quite surprising. Users still fall prey for a phishing attack. What do you have to say about that? Ransomwares, they are on a rise. They are higher than they were ever before. What are we going to do about that? And since Office 365 being an application that involves collaboration and requires to be mobile, your users are obviously going to step out of your office premise, access critical resources in the organization from probably a public Wi-Fi, probably from the train station, or probably from a coffee shop, essentially exposing your IT infrastructure for attack. What are you going to do about that? So what we need essentially is nothing but an understanding of what goes behind. So if you were to understand an attacker's mindset, this is going to be tremendously helpful when you want to counter the attacker's initiative. So we are trying to understand how does this attacker go on initiating an attack, taking over an account, establishing control, and then causing damage. So you would very much be in a position to reverse this because you know how the attacker works. So we are talking about a business email compromise. We are talking about cases of account takeovers, and what you'd essentially need to do is to equip yourself to understand and have triggers or have alert mechanisms that tell you when one of these five things happen. So how are you going to get notified when something goes wrong? That is essentially the idea behind today's session. So you would need to understand what an attacker does. The attacker essentially starts off impersonating to be someone else, tries to establish a relationship with an employee in the organization, and trust me, the attackers are absolutely well groomed. They know what to talk, how to get your employees earn your employees trust. The conversations happen over months together finally before they actually initiate the attack. So that being the case, you would need to inform your employees that if there are any malicious emails, if there are any suspicious emails, or someone's absolutely being or unnecessarily over friendly, trying to offer some gifts or whatever be it, they need to be really alert about that situation, and also try and notify the administrator that something's not right. So it starts off by ensuring that your users know what sort of attacks can they fall prey for. So if it's a BEC that we're talking about, a business email compromise that we're talking about, it all starts with something as simple as a bogus invoice scheme. Most of us would have already known. The criminal takes hold of an employee's email address. The account is used to send notifications to customers. They in turn try and get wire transfers to their personal accounts. The next one is the CEO fraud. Wow, this has been quite rampant in the recent times, given the fact that getting hold of a domain name that's similar to your domain name is not so difficult. They try and come up with creative names that are very close to your domain name, impersonate to be the CEO of a said company, and then demand for payment. So that is one another instance. When you're talking about account compromise, right after an account gets compromised, like I already mentioned, they try to island hop. They try to receive payments into their personal accounts, impersonating to be an executive in the organization, reaching out to the finance team in the organization, and things like that. And the worst of all these, let alone the money that gets lost in this situation, the worst of all these is data exfiltration. How would you be in a position to get notified when data gets copied, data gets transferred, data gets deleted? And essentially, if it's proprietary data and intellectual property, it's still okay. The organization is going to face a huge loss. That's okay. But when we're talking about personally identifiable information, things like your user data, things like your users' personal information, their social security number, or something of that sort, you are not just losing data, but also essentially making yourself open to a huge lawsuit. Given the fact that there is GDPR in place and lots of other compliance regulations that demand your user data is absolutely secure, you wouldn't really want to take this risk. It's when we are trying to essentially get your organization to be more mobile, get your users to be up to productivity, we would also want to consider the cons of such an event. So here, the simple agenda for this event is going to be like this. So we've understood the security landscape so far. We've been talking about what an attacker would essentially do. How does an attacker understand the user's profile? How do they initiate an attack? What is an account takeover, and things like that. So the rest of the session is going to be understanding cases of configuration vulnerabilities. So where did I go wrong? Where did the organization make a mistake? What vulnerabilities am I exposing myself to? So we're going to be talking about that, and then I'm going to be giving you the best practices as given by CISA or the Homeland Security, and then finally I'm going to give you one cool action item that you can go back and implement right away and email me back. Please do email me back after 24 hours and tell me how did your security posture improve. So that is pretty much going to be the agenda for the rest of the 20 minutes. So we'll start off by what CISA recommended. So CISA went on to understand that the migration is inevitable and enterprises are moving to the cloud, and in the last 1 year, like I pointed out, the number of instances have been on the rise. So they stepped in to understand what was going wrong, and when they had engagements with these customers or enterprises, they were able to find that there were a few loopholes. There were a few points that the organization or the vendor who is doing the migration missed out. The first and foremost thing is the multi-factor authentication. So this is as basic as it could get. A single factor of authentication is definitely not going to be enough these days. Passwords are bad as they are easy to guess, and because basically who's configuring them? Your employees. It's quite understandable that passwords aren't necessarily any longer the most secure way of doing things. So we would need to understand that passwords are vulnerable to a variety of attacks. It could be a phishing attack, it could be a brute force attack, or it could be even a password spray attack. And one of the easiest things that you can do to protect against password threats is to just implement multi-factor authentication. With MFA, even if an attacker gets hold of a user's password, the password alone is definitely not going to be sufficient to authenticate or provide the attacker access to data. So multi-factor authentication for users is okay. If you've not enabled it, it's still okay. So if you're in the process of migrating to cloud, I absolutely understand it's a tedious effect altogether. So I get that. But when you're talking about not implementing MFA for administrators, that is a criminal mistake. Because Azure Active Directory has global administrators in Office 365. They are the ones that have the highest level of administration privileges, and is at a tenant level. It is equivalent to your domain administrator on-prem. So what are we talking about? So we are talking about someone who's got the keys to your kingdom. And if multi-factor authentication is not enabled by default to these accounts, there are high chances that everything about your security can go wrong, because these accounts are exposed to the internet. The applications are cloud based. If not immediately secure, everything about your organization security can go wrong. So the first thing that you'll have to do is get back, implement MFA. It's as easy as just a checkbox away, configuring a few questions and getting over with. It would take less than 30 minutes for you to get the whole thing configured. Please implement multi-factor authentication, at least for the accounts that have domain privileges, or your global administrators do that. The next one is going to be auditing. Turning on auditing many a times can be a thing that you would want to overlook. How is it going to be of any importance unless it's the auditing season? That, if that is your mindset, then I think we'll have to fundamentally rejig this, because when it comes to auditing your mailboxes, trust me, when you're doing a root cause analysis for a security problem, you would find tons and tons of clues, or you would actually even be able to find what went wrong from a mailbox audit report. And many a times the biggest challenge for administrators is the audit logs. So I'm going to ask you a quick question and let's see who gets the answer right. When it comes to auditing in Office 365, for how many days does Office 365 let you save or archive the log data? By default, you are given a provision to archive log data. How long do they let you archive that? Let's see who gets the answer right. Okay, I've got Jake who says 60 days. I've got Mogans who says 30 days. Let's see if we've got more answer. Steve says 120. And Luke says 90. Alright, okay. And Marshilo says it's 90. We've got two people who've got the answer right today. Marshilo and Luke have got the answer right. The answer is 90 days. Now, I'm going to follow that up with another question. 3 months of audit log data, is that going to be good enough when you're trying to do a root cause analysis for a problem that had happened 5 months ago? Because the first thing that we understood was the attacker stays in your organization for a considerably long time before they actually exfiltrate any data. They take their time to reconcile, understand your entire infrastructure, and then do it one fine day, even before you know, or they've been exfiltrating data all along. So it takes months together to discover that something had gone wrong. So 3 months of audit data is necessarily not going to serve the purpose, and that is where you would need a tool like AD360, the one in view today, that would essentially remove the upper cap. You could save your audit data however long you choose to save, and all of it can be archived and password protected and encrypted and compressed and all of that, making it really, really simple, and at the same time giving you access to a unified dashboard that gives not just access to one particular type of auditing, but then the entire realm of it. Talk about auditing administrator activity, talk about auditing mailbox activity, talk about auditing user log on log off activity. The whole deal gets audited, stored, and it's available for however long you want from one single dashboard. So that's what we would need. So this is again a recommendation for which by default Office 365 does not give you a great solution. So that's where AD360 steps in. When we're talking about the next point, which is password synchronization. So now, if you're an organization that just moved into Azure and you've been on premise all along, so you have users to manage at both these places, and you've enabled AD Connect or you've enabled synchronization. So this turns out to be a very big problem, because if you've not configured it right, or to be precise, if you haven't configured it right for the right set of users, that could be detrimental. So here what we need to understand is, once the security of your Active Directory is compromised, let's say, okay, it essentially means that the security of your Azure also is compromised, because in my organization there are probably 100 users on Azure. all right, and 150 users on Active Directory. So the set necessarily need not overlap. There could be users on Azure who are absolutely not present on Active Directory. You're compromising the security of those users as well. And essentially, when it comes to synchronizing passwords for administrators, deal that with a grain of salt. Would you really want to enable synchronization for those accounts? Think twice before you enable synchronization for admin accounts. So this is again a best practice, not just password, but generally synchronization between administrator accounts on Active Directory and on Azure. Think twice before you enable it. And if you're doing it, keep a tab on the admin activity. Have an alert set for activity by the administrators. The tool that we are talking about lets you do that. The last bit is about the authentication protocols that are in place. So what we'll need to understand is when we're talking about something like multi-factor authentication, it necessarily does not go great with the existing legacy systems. The existing legacy systems do not pair with MFA, to be precise. So Office 365 lets you use your legacy systems. Come on now. Now when you're talking about security, you still let users use legacy systems. I understand they're doing it from a usability standpoint, just to ensure that your users have easy access. But if your environment is not ready to block these authentications, then you're very much exposing yourself to having a system that does not have a second factor of authentication. So how are you going to prevent applications from not being able to access your tenants' resources when there is no MFA in place? Again, you're exposing it completely. So what we'll need is a conditional access policy. A conditional access policy that very much understands a user's access, draws a risk profile for that user, checks if the user is accessing from a known environment, checks the sign-in risk level, and then lets the user access through a legacy authentication. If there is a deviation, if there is any malicious behavior, if for all of a sudden there's an access in the middle of the night or from a different geographical location, the conditional access policy that comes along with your Office 365 stops an access, alerts the administrator, and then lets you go forward, taking the decision whether you want to let the user have access or not. So it starts with one simple step. I would strongly recommend do this right away after the webinar gets over. It's not going to take a lot of time. Just enable multi-factor authentication. I would say do it for all your users. And it's become easier than ever before. Please look up for the mobile authenticator that is out there. It's from Microsoft. It's easy to install, easy to use. Let me try and quickly look up if I can get you the link for the mobile authenticator from Microsoft. Just a quick second. I'm looking that up parallelly to check if I can give you access to the link, and there you go, I found it. So in 3, 2, 1, and on your chat. So go for the mobile authenticator, get your users to install it. It is quite simple. It's not anything that's rocket science. Your users can very much have it implemented right away. And in fact, the best part is it supports fingerprint, it supports PIN, it supports all your traditional authentication that you do it for your Google or for your Facebook, or the second level of authentication that you have for all the apps. As simple as that, but can make a world of difference. So please do enable that. So when we're talking about managing it for multiple tenants, there comes the problem. AD360 will let you manage multiple tenants, which is the case in most of the time, and also help you enforce MFA if need be. Not just give them an option, but enforce MFA need be. You can find specific users all across tenants and enable MFA for them. That is going to be possible with AD360. The next aspect that I'd want you to remember, go and implement is turning on audit logging. So like I earlier pointed out, the tool has no limitation with respect to how long you want to audit data or save that audit data. That is one good thing. And number two, since it has this unified dashboard that gives you an overview or an overall picture for all these auditing data, please do enable the reports that are available. Turn those reports on. It is as simple as a checkbox. Just get started, enable auditing, and go forward using the functionality to the fullest. So you would get access to users activity all through. You would be able to monitor mailbox activities. You would be able to monitor admins activities and all of that. So all you'll have to do is just enable auditing. So if you do that, you are going to get two things. One, an overview as to what's happening, and number two, I'm going to break the suspense in some time. It is called the secure score. I'll tell you what's secure score and how is it essentially going to help you tackle your Office 365 problems. So turn on auditing data, turn on mailbox auditing. That is going to give you access to all of that. So if you want a unified dashboard that reports and also alerts if there is a deviation from usual behavior, then you can very much turn that on in the AD360 alerts module. So we've been talking about quite a few best practices given by CISA, and in fact I would say, in my personal opinion, they've just covered the basics. There is a lot more that can be done when it comes to enforcing security and doing it the easy way. So just a few things that you could start off with is enable your spam and malware detection. Again, a checkbox away. They give it for you right away. It's available in the Security and Compliance Center. Please go to your Security and Compliance Center and enable the malware detection. As simple as that. Stop mail forwarding to external email address. As a best practice, I would suggest you can ask your email users to never at all forward emails to external domains. Many a times, insiders in the organization with malicious intent, or someone who wants to take a dig at your organization after they leave your organization, essentially try and leave backdoor access points into your infrastructure. It starts with something as simple as a mail forwarding. Most of the times it gets overlooked. What if I tell you, you can have an out of the box report that tells you who are the users in your organizations who've set mail forwarding to external email IDs. So you would not just be able to see those email IDs, but instantly disable or perform an action right on top of those emails, have them disabled at any capacity. So we're talking about removing suspicious mail forwarding. This is exactly what an attacker does as well. Not just your insiders, attackers do the same thing. They try and laterally move and get hold of as many number of accounts as possible, and then go on setting touch points for them to get access back into the organization. The next one is the mobile devices. So when we're talking Office 365, we are talking mobile, we are talking mobility. So what essentially happens right here is the compromise on security for usability and mobility. So you would need to understand that and take a proactive step right here. Get hold of all the devices that are there in your organization. And if you're an organization that favors bring your own device policy, please do get a list of all your user devices. It could be their cell phones, it could be their tablets, it could be their smart laptops, or whatever be it. Get hold of all those device details and have it uploaded into the solution. When there is a deviation, when there is a new device that is connecting for the first time, accessing an application, say for example logging into OneDrive, trying to copy some data, trying to do something malicious, trying to forward an email, or do any activity that they were not supposed to do because they are a new device, you would get a notification. So this is something that you could do. Track mobile devices that are connected to your Office 365, and trust me, you're going to save a lot of trouble. The next one is tracking sensitive information on emails. Again, this is a best practice that I'd want you to implement. So organizations have intellectual property at multiple levels. You can have those keywords entered into the search query, and you can save an alert and start checking if anybody is sending out emails with those keywords. Or what you could do is you could get to the Office 365 Manager module of AD360 and enable a condition-based search. Based on the inputs that you give, based on the way you train the system, if a data of particular sort, be it credit card information, be it personally identifiable information, be it some social security number, something of that string type, something of that pattern gets shared or copied or moved or sent across, you would get notified. And in fact, we are working on a proactive way to implement a solution that can stop such data being transferred, or stop that from being deleted or destroyed based on the content or the condition that you've set. The next one is the pattern based search. Like in the previous case, you can have an automatic configuration that searches for specific patterns across your organization and checks if there is any data being transferred maliciously. You could very much do that as well. And on top of it, I would strongly recommend have a policy that audits your OneDrive, have a policy that audits your SharePoint. If you see malicious copy pasting activity, deletion activity, you would need to be in a provision, even if not able to stop it, but at least in a position to immediately get an alert that you can curtail the damage or minimize the damage. So you would need an automation search engine that lets you do that. So all of this boils down to one simple step, which is the Microsoft Secure Score. And this is the most important piece for the day, the takeaway for the day that I'd want you to go back and implement right away. The Secure Score dashboard is available for free. Please go back, enable the Secure Score dashboard, start using it. I'm going to drop the link to the Secure Score right now, and I want you to tell me what is your Secure Score. I'm going to quickly pull up my Secure Score and show you how much I've got. So let's see what is my Secure Score. Just a quick second. Okay, here you go. You've got my Secure Score dashboard and it says 93 out of 507. Let's see who's got a better Secure Score than I have. Okay, I have Andrew, who's got almost twice as much as I got. He's got 195. I've got Christina, who's got a 226. Wow, that is really cool. I've got Mogans, who's got 275. That's the highest so far. Great going. That's the highest so far. Alright, so we've got Morgans, who stands out to be the clear winner. He almost 3 times more than my Secure Score. My score is pathetic, guys, trust me. So it all boils down to just starting off and enabling a few functionalities. So it very clearly tells you what you're lacking. So when I want to understand how can I improve, it gives me access to improvement actions as well. So these are essentially the list of things that I will need to do to enhance my Secure Score, and it is going to reflect in less than 24 hours. It starts off with something as simple as turning on multi-factor authentication. That was the first point that we discussed today, didn't we? So turn multi-factor authentication on, and that's going to give you a score of 50, an instant boost to your Secure Score. And trust me, when you do this over time repeatedly, I will suggest you do it once in a month. You're going to get a list of new actions that you can work on and consistently prove your organization you're working towards improving the Secure Score. And it gives you a very beautiful report at the end of it. It analyzes your Secure Score in the past, it analyzes your Secure Score now, and it also analyzes the Secure Score when you altered it, and it gives you a consolidated time-based report that tells you how have you graduated your organization security. Turning on mailbox auditing, I told you, right? So it gives you 10 more points. Simple but useful actionable items right here. Enabling password self-service for users, that is an kick-ass way to do it. Enabling malware detection, like I told you. Enabling mailbox auditing, enabling mail forwarding rules. All of that, just those tasks that I told you, turn them on, and I'm pretty sure you're going to get 100 extra on your Secure Score dashboard. So please go back, turn them on, tell me how much did you get, what did your Secure Score improve to, and I would love to hear what you have to say, or how much did you get. Just a quick second while I toggle back to my presentation. So there you go. So we've got the Microsoft Secure Dashboard right there to help you tell where exactly you stand and how exactly can you improve. As simple as that, just one action item for the day. Please do that. Get back, improve your Secure Score, just enable a few things and tell me how exactly it's changed your score at the end of the day. So you would also get access to details as to what are you preventing your organization or securing your organization against. Things like ransomware, things like password cracking, all of that are going to no longer be a problem. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to share a link to downloading the Office 365 security guide that we've jointly written. I would want you to send me a quick email on jay@manageengine.com for you to get access to this interesting ebook that we have written, the one that is going to be changing the way you operate Office 365, recommendations that are going to make your Office 365 exponentially secure. All you'll have to do is write to jay@manageengine.com, which is my email address. I'm going to write back with the link to the ebook, with the link to the best practices, with the link to downloading today's presentation and the video if you want. You guys have been lovely. I hope you found this session to be useful and interesting and informative. Thank you so much for being such a wonderful audience. My name is Jay, your presenter for the day. You all have a great day. Bye bye.